Hey guys, what's up? My name is Dom. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, I typically make bookish content, movie content, and anything else in between because I like to do whatever I want on this channel, and tonight is going to be movie content. For today's video, I am going to go over everything I watched in the month of August. There is a ton to talk about, both movies and TV shows, so let's just jump right into it. Okay, so the first thing I watched in August is a Charlie Brown special. If you've been here for a while, you know I'm trying to watch all of them. There's over 55. We're almost there, y'all. I'm trying to watch about between 5 to 6 every month. So the first one I watched in August is She's a Good Skate, Charlie Brown. This focuses on Peppermint Patty, and she is preparing for an ice skating tournament. I don't really have much to say about this one. This didn't make me feel any type of way. I'm pretty indifferent to it. Wasn't bad, but it's not the greatest, and I don't have any specifics as to why. 3 out of 5 stars, but a very low 3 out of 5. Then I watched Snoopy Presents It's the Small Things, Charlie Brown, which came out in 2022. So Charlie Brown is desperate to win a baseball game. However, a fiasco arises when his sister Sally finds a flower on their pitcher's mound and she vows to protect it. This special focuses on the brother-sister relationship, and it is unbelievably sweet. What I really like about the special is just how realistic Sally feels as a character. She's only supposed to be 6 years old, and 6-year-olds tend to have a lot of big feelings they don't know what to do with, and that was Sally in this special. Sally saw the beauty of the world in this tiny flower, and you can't blame her for wanting to protect it. And I do find Sally relatable even as an adult, not only because I was once 6 years old, but because I feel like we can all say we have something that's important to us that others may not find as important. For example, I love books. My book collection's very important to me, but I know people who don't give a shit. And it always sucks when people tell you to stop caring. Like we see in this short, like Charlie Brown, he didn't explicitly say this, but he said it in so many words that Sally is overreacting. She should not be caring about this tiny flower, despite the fact it's her whole world in that moment. And just to bring it back to the title of the short, I do like the moral of the story. You have to learn what's important, but also at the same time, you have to go outside and touch some grass. You gotta go out and smell the roses, because sometimes it really is those small things that make life what it is, and that it's what describes the beauty of life. And I thought how the two made up in the end was really precious, so I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I went to the theater and I saw my first horror movie of the Halloween season, because me personally, Halloween starts in August. I try to watch 31 new to me horror movies, horror, thriller, Halloween themed movies. One day it's gonna happen in October, just right now that's not feasible. So I do start early in August. The first one being Together. And in this movie, there is a couple that moves to a new town. Their relationship is pretty rocky, but after a strange encounter, they notice that their flesh is sticking together. Before I get into my review, I need you guys to know this movie is more so body horror than it is like actual horror. There's not going to be a lot of jump scares. It's not atmospheric. The music isn't typical horror movie music. What's scaring you, what's supposed to scare you, is what their bodies look like in the moment. But let me tell you, this shit was fucking hilarious. I'm not sure how much of the humor was intentional, because some of this dialogue was just so corny and out of pocket, and just the way their bodies contorted was hilarious. I'm not sure if the humor was intentional, but I will tell you my entire theater was cackling. And then the reason I'm not sure if it's supposed to be intentional is because like some scenes, yes, it was. But there were other scenes we were laughing at that were definitely trying very hard to be serious. And I do think this movie as a whole is trying to be a serious movie. I really like the two halves of a whole concept that this movie was exploring. However, this movie does fall victim of what I think a lot of horror movies fall victim to, is when the background is better than the plot of the movie itself. When they explain the background of what was going on, I'm like, oh, I would rather see a movie about that than our main couple. Because just for me personally, it was kind of hard to root for the couple. Because they start out rocky, so you're supposed to be feeling, you're kind of wishy-washy about them, but I wanted them to break up in the end. I didn't want them to be together. So I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next movie was a rewatch, and that is Freaky Friday, and this is about a mother and daughter who are constantly at odds with one another, and they switch bodies for the day. I'm gonna keep this review short and sweet, because this was never a favorite movie growing up. It's just one I happened to like, just not as much as others, but I did want to be prepared for the sequel, so I needed that refresher. And it's still pretty funny at times. I do think Jamie Lee Curtis has amazing comedic timing, not so much Lindsay Lohan, but there is like a gap in their acting given their age differences. But I'm always a sucker for movies like this because I always do love the trope of a mother and daughter being at odds, but then they have that emotional scene in the end where they make up. The next movie I watched, I actually reacted to, but you will not see that reaction until about November just because I could not get it out in time before spooky season. It's a book to movie adaptation, which I love to do on this channel, and that is Ready Player One. So in this movie, the users of the Oasis, which is a virtual online game, they compete to complete a series of quests made by the creator after he dies so that they can win his fortune. I read this book, I want to say about 2 years ago. I think last year was when I read the sequel, which was not good. But I did like the book. I didn't love it, but I did think it was a lot of fun. So I was excited to go into this movie, especially because I saw it was directed by Steven Spielberg, but I was actually kind of disappointed. One of my main gripes with this, so I will be critiquing this more so as a book to movie adaptation rather than its own thing, just because the differences are just so in your face. But one of the main things I noticed, one of the first things I noticed about this movie, and like one of the main reasons I don't like it, is that the quests in these movies are dumbed down by a lot. In the movie, I could easily guess the answers and the tricks, whereas I feel like they were a lot more complicated in the book, because that's what made the book so fun. I had a lot of fun trying to weave together these clues, and I just thought so much of it was so clever because it was subtle. A lot of it wasn't in your face like it is in the movie. And the way the movie handles it feels generic in any other adventure movie. And one of the main reasons I don't like this movie is because what I loved about the book is that it felt like a love letter to the 80s. The author was clearly using it as a way to show off his knowledge because the 80s were mentioned in every single page. The main thing was that this character, the creator of the Oasis, was obsessed with his childhood in the 80s, and that's what the Oasis was based on. And our main character, Wade, was constantly playing 80s games, talking about 80s movies, but I just thought it was so cool. And then the game itself was based around the 80s. That's what all the clues were. Like, there was a John Hughes planet in the sequel, stuff like that. Whereas this movie took all of that out. It was just another video game. There were like 1 or 2 80s songs in the soundtrack, but that was it. And that's actually kind of shocking to me because I feel like Steven Spielberg's prime was the 80s. Like when we think about Jaws, when we think about Jurassic Park, I think E.T. came out in the 80s. When I think of movies in the 80s, Steven Spielberg is one of the directors that comes to mind. So I was actually super disappointed to see that he didn't incorporate all that in this film. And there was also a lot of cringy dialogue that led to a lot of cringy acting because like I feel like even good actors wouldn't know what to do with the script. But one thing I did really like how the Oasis looked. So I gave this 2.5 out of 5 stars. The next movie is a rewatch. It's another Charlie Brown special, and that is Snoopy the Musical. This is an adaptation of the stage musical that focuses on Snoopy. It's a sequel to You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. And this is boring, and I still do not like how these kids sing. Then I went to the theater and I saw Freakier Friday. In this movie, Anna and her mother switch places with Anna's daughter and her soon-to-be stepdaughter who hate each other. And I gotta say, this is actually a pretty solid sequel, which is surprising given how long ago Freaky Friday came out. It's really funny. It's the same type of humor as the first one, so which is actually kind of shocking. I do think transferring from early 2000s humor to 2025 humor, it did translate very well, and Jamie Lee Curtis looks great in this movie. However, I do want to emphasize that the adults switch with the kids. When I was watching the trailer, I've only seen the trailer once, so I was definitely misremembering it. But I went into this movie thinking the 2 kids were gonna switch with each other, but no, they switch into the adult's body. So Lindsay Lohan is playing her daughter, Jamie Lee Curtis is playing the stepdaughter, and then vice versa. The kids are playing Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis. So because of that, like, yes, the kids as characters are the main characters we're following. However, the stars of the movie are Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis. Which makes total sense because they were the stars of the first movie, and you know, they're banking, studios right now are banking on millennial nostalgia. It's just that because of that, I feel like the kid actors themselves didn't get a ton of screen time, and I would have liked to see them more because they actually did pretty well with the scenes they did have. But another thing I really liked about this movie is that there were bloopers in the end credits, and we need to make those great again. I miss having bloopers in end credits because I feel like it's, for the movie like this too, I feel like bloopers are just a perfect vibe. So I ended up giving this movie 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I watched another Charlie Brown special. This one is Snoopy Presents Welcome Home Franklin, which came out in 2024. So this special focuses on Franklin, and if you're if you're not familiar with Peanuts history, Franklin was the first black character in the Peanuts gang. And if I remember correctly, he was written as a response to either Martin Luther King Jr.'s death. His first appearance was in a Charlie Brown Thanksgiving, and from what I was reading, the network didn't want him. They were trying to convince, Charles Schultz to not include him, and he wasn't having any of that. He's like, we need to include this character. And since then, Franklin has grown, he makes many appearances, and now he finally has his own special. And in this one, he's the new kid in town, he's finding it difficult to make friends, and then the town is having a soapbox derby, which is when the kids have to make their own cars and they race them. And he ends up teaming up with the other unpartnered kid, Charlie Brown. So I wanted to give Franklin's history just so you understand how important this special was and that there was finally a spotlight on him, because he is one of the minor characters in the gang. I just find it so interesting because of why he was created, and in this special he actually mentions something like that. He mentions he's one of the only black kids in this neighborhood, and I think this is actually one of the first times I've ever seen a Peanuts special mention race like that. And just like with the other specials, especially these newer ones, I thought this was really sweet. His journey to making friends felt so realistic. Making friends is hard. He's a stranger in a strange land, so I get it, especially as an adult. I do think it's easier to make friends as a kid than an adult, but in adulthood, it's hard making new friends when you're in a new environment. After moving to Philadelphia, it took me a year to find friends and to find my people. So if I had watched this around that time, I probably would have been in tears. But it was sweet and funny and endearing watching Franklin fumble the way I did. You know, awkward jokes, having to learn what worked and what didn't in this new environment. And you know what? I really liked his corny jokes. He had a book of corny jokes, and tough crowd, but I really liked them. And I also really liked how his friendship with Charlie Brown developed. In the beginning, they got along swimmingly, but on the surface, which is like, I feel like how a lot of friendships start. But then he got to know Charlie Brown. Their little bump in the road exposed their true colors for both of them, so both of them were miffed and they had an argument. But because of that, they also worked together to overcome that, and they became tight friends. They weren't surface level anymore. And it had such a happy ending. There's a little quote that I don't want to spoil. I want y'all to hear it for the first time if you ever choose to watch this. One of the reasons I'm loving these newer specials so much is there's something about them that feels so much more vulnerable than all the older ones. I think I've cried at every single one I've watched. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. The next movie I watched in theaters, and that is Weapons. In this movie, an entire town is confused after all but one child from the same classroom run away from their homes at the same exact time. You know what? I really like this one. This one really worked for me. It's from the guy who made Barbarian, which I also really liked. It's one of those movies where at no point did I know where it was going. I tried to lower my expectations for this one because I didn't want to compare the two, but I ended up really enjoying it. I thought the horror, I would categorize this as a horror comedy, and I thought the horror and the comedy were balanced really well. And one of the reasons it worked for me is because I saw this like only a week after I saw Together. And in this one, the comedic scenes were clearly supposed to be comedic, so I felt like it was appropriate for me to laugh. These kids were doing the fucking Naruto run, and that just took me out. There's a lot of different point of views throughout this movie. I think we follow a total of 7 to 8 people, and I was a little worried when I noticed that's where the movie was going, but it actually worked really well for me. It felt like a puzzle, and I liked seeing all the little pieces come together. I liked the villain in this, and I liked that she didn't have some crazy backstory. She was just there. She wanted that one thing, and she was gonna get it. So this worked really well for me. It was good vibes all around. You don't really need to think too hard about it. It's a good popcorn movie. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. So for my next movie, I went on my movie list notes in my phone thingamabob. And this month I decided to focus on Vincent Price movies, skipping over some of the horror stuff just because I do want to save some movies for, you know, October. So I watched what I think is his second ever movie, because I'm watching everything, even if he's just a side character like he is in this one. And that is The Private Lives of Elizabeth and Essex. And this movie is about an affair between Queen Elizabeth I and the Earl of Essex. I'm going to be completely honest, this is going to be a short and sweet review because this is not my type of movie. I got kind of bored, so I started putting together Legos like halfway through, And by the end of it, I definitely only watched this just because Vincent Price is in it. But I did think the costumes were immaculate, and the guy who plays Essex is really handsome. So I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. The next movie I watched is an old school thriller movie, and I reacted to this, which you will see in October, and that is Suspicion. In this movie, an heiress marries a playboy and quickly discovers his dishonesty. This stars Cary Grant, who I find to be incredibly handsome. It also stars the woman who played Mrs. De Winter in Rebecca, which was also directed by Alfred Hitchcock, so yes, he directed this one as well. And I actually liked the majority of this film, like that first hour. It was actually very tense at times, and you know immediately something is not right with this man. I also think Cary Grant did a great job balancing between being playful and then being kooky, but then also being sinister. So at times it's like, it asks the question, is he lying or is he telling her the truth? But what didn't work for me, and it's why I ended up rating this movie fairly low, I thought the ending fell pretty flat. I found myself to be way too distrusting when it came to this, and I honestly didn't know if I was supposed to take the ending at face value, so I did have to take it to Google to see what I was supposed to get from it. And from the behind the scenes info, yes, you are supposed to take the ending at face value, but then I was reading more into it, and the ending we see is actually not the ending Alfred Hitchcock had in mind. He wanted to end it the way the book did, but the studio was like, oh, we don't want Cary Grant to look like an asshole. So spoiler alert, you could probably figure out what the ending is. And I'm like, let the hot dude show his acting chops. Like, why do people always have to be perfect during this time period? So I'm glad we moved on from that and like the Hays Code and all that. I do think the book's ending, from what I read, makes more sense when it comes to the narrative of the story. The ending we ended up getting left a sour taste in my mouth, so I only gave this movie 3 out of 5 stars. The next movie I watched is another Vincent Price movie, and that is called Green Hell. And in this movie, a group of adventurers head to the South American jungle so they can look for an ancient Incan treasure. This movie is so fucking boring that I remember nothing except the jungle imagery and they meet some woman. I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. Next is another Charlie Brown special, and that is Snoopy Presents a Summer Musical, which actually came out this year. In this special, Charlie Brown is excited for his unenthused sister to experience summer camp for the first time. However, within the first couple days, they find out that the camp is closing due to a low population, and Sally takes it upon herself to work with others so that they can save the camp. I had a harder time with this one, which is a little disappointed giving my rave reviews about the other newer specials, because as cute and as funny as this was, the pacing in this one was super awkward. And I do think it's because it's a musical, which is upsetting to say because I love a good musical, but even I can admit oftentimes in musicals I feel like the songs stop the story. Plenty of songs enhance a story in a musical, that's why I love them, but there are definitely songs where it's like, I understand why haters of musicals hate them, and I feel like this is a prime example of that. The songs in this special could be removed, and I don't think it would change much. What I did really like about the special, though, besides the ending, because of course I cried, again, I cried during all of these, what I did really like was how they did the younger versions of our characters. In order to portray that, they actually animated the original designs from the very first Peanut comics, because if you look them up, Snoopy and Charlie Brown look a bit different than their final designs now, and I thought that was really clever. In the end, I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. My next movie is another Vincent Price movie. This is Brigham Young, and this is the story of Brigham Young and how the Mormons settled in Utah. Now, right off the bat, I do want to mention that this movie does get a lot of flack on Letterboxd. I don't know about what the actual critics said, but on Letterboxd, a lot of people give this shit because it's just Mormon propaganda. But again, I watched this movie because Vincent Price is in it. He's fucking, who's the founder of Mormonism? He's Joseph Smith in this. I'm like, oh my god, of course I have to watch it. And I'm going to be very honest, as a non-religious person, so like an outsider looking in of sorts, I didn't think this movie was any different than other like religious movies, religious epics that I've seen. From a Catholic perspective, so as someone who's watched movies like The Song of Bernadette, this movie felt no different than that because of how grandiose it is. It's just as grandiose and it feels just as contrived. And the acting is the same, the acting style is the same. Like it tends to be, movies back then had kind of over the top acting, that was just the style. But these movies tend to be over the top even for its time. This movie is too long, it did get boring, but I do like the main couple that we follow. And I think one of the main gripes a lot of people have about this movie is just how false it is. I cannot attest to that. Everything I know about Mormonism is because of the musical, The Book of Mormon. And that feels kind of insulting to compare it to, like, because it's South Park humor, so if you know, you know. So again, it's not really my place to say whether or not what's happening in this movie is false. I would do your own research on that. What a movie, 2.5 out of 5 stars. But then I did watch another Vincent Price movie because I wanted something easy to watch and something to turn my brain off to, and it is a horror movie, and that is The Invisible Man Returns. This is about a man who was falsely accused of murder, so he takes a drug that makes him invisible and he goes mad. Just like the first movie, it's another fun time you don't need to think too hard about. It's a very straightforward story. I loved watching this guy be an asshole, an understandable asshole, but an asshole nonetheless, and I really like the graphics for its time. And this movie does make me wonder if this is where Vincent Price's horror career got its start, because he is mostly known as a horror actor, and his voice is very recognizable because I do think his voice fits the concept of the Invisible Man better. I like his voice better than the original guys, just because I feel like it sounds more evil and conniving and just fits this concept better. So I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. Next is another movie you guys will be seeing my reaction to in October, and it's also a movie I was surprised by, and that is Carnival of Souls. After a woman is a sole survivor of a car accident, she moves to a new town where she is haunted by an abandoned carnival. One of the main things I like about this movie is the ambiance. It's a very quiet movie. There's not a lot of music except for the creepy carnival music you hear every now and then. The actors are very quiet, it's very atmospheric, and it makes for an eerie movie as a whole. And honestly, the jump scares are actually pretty good in this. They definitely got me. I did not like looking at the things that jumped out at us. I think the lead actress did great in this. She did a really good job portraying like a timid, confused woman who is clearly needs help and clearly going through a psychotic break. I do think it's actually a good portrayal of post-traumatic stress disorder. And I do really like the storytelling and what they decided to show on camera and what wasn't shown and the way everything was organized, because throughout the whole movie, I genuinely couldn't tell if she was being stalked by a real human being or if she was seeing ghosts. And honestly, what makes this movie is the ending. The ending is a trope that a lot of people actually don't like, at least in the modern day. But I had no idea it was coming, so I was actually caught off guard, but in a good way. I don't know, I felt really uncomfortable watching this, but in a way where you're supposed to be uncomfortable because, you know, a woman's being followed and stalked and she doesn't know what's going on, you as the viewer doesn't know what's going on. It's just so creepy, and a movie hasn't made me feel this uncomfortable in a very long time. So I ended up giving this 4.5 out of 5 stars, and it's currently one of my top 10 favorite movies of the year. Alright, the penultimate movie I watched is another Vincent Price movie, and that is Hudson's Bay. And this is a, per Letterboxd synopsis, highly fictionalized history of Canada where an explorer imagines an empire on Hudson's Bay. And Vincent Price as King Charles II. So a good thing to say about this movie, I did really like our main character and how he fought for what he wanted, and he often stood up for those who didn't really have a voice. But it's not really, these type of history movies aren't really for me. I did get bored, but I've definitely seen worse, so I gave this 2.5 out of 5 stars. Then the last movie I watched in the month of August before we move on to TV shows, it is a Charlie Brown special. I watched this on the very last day of August, and it was a short summer Charlie Brown, which came out in 1969. So in this one, Lucy signs everyone up for summer camp, and the boys and girls have constant competitions. This one was a funny watch because the special before this was a summer musical where Charlie Brown loves summer camp. But in this one, the boys are absolutely miserable, so that contrast was hilarious. And I think in other Charlie Brown specials, he ends up loving summer camp. So this one's, I don't want to say slightly out of character because this is one of the first ones. So I'd say he definitely has some character development as the shorts go on. And I did find the first half of this pretty cute, but in the last half, the antics just got old pretty quick. It felt really repetitive, and then it kind of just ends. I had to rewatch it a couple times because I didn't believe that. I thought something happened with my computer, but no, the ending is just very abrupt. I ended up giving this only 3 out of 5 stars. And now let's move on to the TV shows. Okay, so the first first TV show I completed is season 2 of a documentary, and that is Shiny Happy People. So this is the documentary that was originally about the Duggars, but season 2 is about Teen Mania, so I'm assuming if they ever get more seasons, it's just going to be an anthology series. But season 2 is 3 episodes long. It's about Teen Mania, who were a religious organization that performed concerts and gave jobs to teens to bring them closer to God. So admittedly, I went into this not knowing it was going to be a subject change, especially when they showed the Duggar cousin within like the first 5 minutes. She was just there to give Jim Bob's reaction to season 1. Unsurprisingly, he hated it. I love season 1. I don't give a fuck what he thinks. But let's get back on topic here. I was disappointed at first when I realized that the Duggars had nothing to do with the second season. But y'all, shit was so crazy, I couldn't look away anyway, and I ended up completing the 3 episodes. It does include a variety of people. It includes the people who were teens while this were going on. It includes the people who worked for Teen Mania, the teens in question, now adults in these interviews, and it interviews the people who were in the main guy's circle, like whether they were running campaigns for him, supporting him in court, or they were also the adults in the organization. It's hard to describe why exactly what I was watching was so crazy. I feel like you guys have to watch this for yourself because there is a bunch of found footage in it. As a lover of live music, I totally understand why a lot of kids fall for this because some of those pyrotechnics were insane. I love a good loud song, and from what I was seeing, what I was hearing, it looks like that's what it was. Just a lot of loud music to pump you up. Also, it's called Acquire, the concerts were called Acquire the Fire, which is a bar. But like, I get it. Sometimes when I still do go to mass, like with family, just to appease them, if the music hits the acoustics of the building just right, I have moments where I'm like, am I actually feeling the power of God, or do I just like live music? And I feel like a lot of kids, it's the latter. But because of religion, they got confused because I'm like, how do you gather this many people? I'm rambling now, but it was just insane work. Some of the interviews were difficult to watch because you could really feel the anger a lot of these people felt. Like, it had a lot of grown men in tears. Like, this really fucked them up mentally, physically too. They had to do a lot of weird physical work that should only belong in the military. And I wouldn't say this is particularly biased or anything because I do feel like it includes both sides, which I think it is good to include because like all things, people are going to be affected in different ways. But I don't know, in the end, there's just a ton of found footage that speaks for itself. I am not doing this justice. It was just so... My jaw was on the floor. It was crazy. The next TV show I completed is an anime that was recommended to me by a friend, and that is Takopi's Original Sin. It's 1 season, 6 episodes, and this is about an alien whose sole purpose is just to make people happy. He's literally called a Happian. I think his planet is called Planet Happy, but he drops down to Earth and meets a very depressed 9-year-old. So this got recommended to me because this friend knows I like a lot of depressing shit. I like to feel things. She's like, oh, it's dark and emotional, and shit, damn. In 6 short episodes, it explored grief, it explored depression, and it explored mental health in so many ways, some of which were graphic. It was interesting seeing these characters learn what they had to. Both the girl and the alien were learning the harsh realities of life, but in different ways. The girl was much farther ahead than the alien, because the whole thing with the alien is that he knew no nuance, and he always had, the glass was always half full, so the girl would say something and he took it a different way. It was his naivety that really affects you. Like, you see this poor 9-year-old girl crying out for help, and he just quite literally has no idea what's going on. This alien specifically gets a lot of harsh reality checks. Sometimes it takes a lot for someone to be happy and content. You can't just play with a little camera and they'll be fine. And he also quickly learns, and again, with this contrast with his naivety, it's hard hitting, but he quickly learns that actions have consequences. I do think this was a good show overall. However, it's certain arcs that kind of made me feel wishy-washy. But the 2 girls, I think their arc ended where it needed to. Their story is complete. I have mixed feelings about the boy that's in this. Takopi's, though, I feel like was definitely unfinished, to the point that I was actually shocked to find out that these 6 episodes covers the entire manga. I definitely thought there was going to be more. And I do have some gripes with the music, because music in anime often, I mean, for all things, not just anime, but it often sets the mood for things. And I understand the music choices, but at the same time, they definitely felt very out of place. Sometimes inappropriate. But again, good show overall. I do just want to say one of the main themes in the show, specifically the first episode, is suicide. There is a very graphic depiction of a suicide. So that is a major trigger warning. If this interests you, definitely keep that in mind. Suicide and murder, quite frankly. And the next show I want to talk about, I completed the first part because part 2 doesn't come out until this month in September. This disappoints me to talk about a little bit because I was so excited for it, but apparently, given my whole page of notes, I have a lot of feelings about it. And it's Wednesday Season 2 Part 1. So this is an Addams Family adaptation, but it specifically focuses on the daughter, Wednesday, when she's a teenager, going to a school called Nevermore, and it's full of outcasts. So you have Wednesday, who could see the future. You have her brother, who's a lightning bender. He could shoot lightning from his fingers. Her best friend's a werewolf. You got some vampires. Another friend is a Medusa type character. So on, so forth. And in Season 2, she just has another mystery to solve. Now, why was I excited for this? So I love the Addams Family. I've caught a lot of adaptations growing up. I've read some of the comics, which is where they started from. Friendly reminder, the 90s movies are not the original. I keep seeing people online upset that this is nothing like the 90s movies. Despite the gripes I'm going to talk about, it's not supposed to be like the 90s movies. Tim Burton grabbed a lot of inspiration from the original comics. That's another, that we don't need to go on that rant. But I've read some of the comics. I'm watching the I've seen episodes of the 60s sitcom before, but now I'm watching it through for the first time this year. I've seen the Scooby-Doo animated special from the 70s that the Addams Family is in. I used to love the 90s cartoon growing up, so I'm actually a big Addams Family fan, and Wednesday has always been my favorite character. Season 1, I actually really liked a lot. It was one of my favorites of the year when it came out. It's not flawless at all. Like, there were some gripes I had with Season 1. The reason I vibed with the first season so much, because I did think it was a good, like, streamlined story. It went from point A to point B. I vibed with it really well, and I just had a lot of fun. I was able to turn my brain off. I didn't have to think too hard about things. It's a good popcorn show, and it's a fun show. And sometimes if I can have a lot of fun with a show that's not like great in the technique aspect, I will still love said show. So again, because of all that, I actually was really excited for Season 2, and because Season 1 ended on that cliffhanger. But the writing, which was admittedly never great in the first place, but again, enough to keep me entertained, it went downhill in Season 2. One of the first things I noticed, and it did low-key piss me off, even though I ended up liking this character. If you remember at the end of Season 1, there was this like small twist, which ended up being the cliffhanger, that Wednesday was being stalked. And I thought that was going to be the plot of Season 2, trying to figure this out, because each season seems like it's going to be a new mystery. However, that gets solved within like the first episode, and it was super anticlimactic. We do get more Pugsley this season, which is nice because I've always liked their brother-sister relationship. However, I do not like this iteration of Pugsley. I think my favorite iteration of Pugsley is admittedly the 90s cartoon, from what I remember, because from what I remember, he was very... what's the word I'm looking for? He was very cocky, very confident. Every iteration of Pugsley before this is confident in his own way. He's a very confident prankster. The Pugsley in this show, one, is not a prankster, two, has no backbone. Wednesday is constantly defending him, which, whatever, that is his older sister. But in other iterations of the Addams Family, he's still able to hold his own. And I'm sure part of the reason I don't like this Pugsley is because his actor can't act. He's a terrible performer, and it's so noticeable when he has a scene with Jenna Ortega, who's a very seasoned actress by this point. She's been acting since she was a young kid, but the difference in their talent is stark. And then I had issues with the plot of this season. There's definitely a main plot, just like there was one in the first season. However, Season 2 I'm saying however so much in this review, but anyway, Season 2 just introduces so many plot points that it feels very episodic at the same time. Season 1 did have a more streamlined story. It had a goal and it reached it. It went from point A to point B. But Season 2 feels like we start at point A, but we have to go to 8.1 first, then we have to go to 8.2, then 8.3, but then back to 8.2 before we could ever possibly get to point B. And because of that, because of the more episodic feel, it didn't feel like I was watching the same show. Season 2 part 1 feels all over the place is what I think I'm trying to say. Also, I was not feeling Catherine Zeta-Jones' look this season. I hate to sound like I'm not a girl's girl. I hate commenting on people's appearance that they can't necessarily change. So I was hesitant to bring up her face this season because I saw a side-by-side of her. She plays Morticia, by the way. I saw a side-by-side of her in season 1 and then in season 2, and it is drastic. And one of the first things I noticed this season is that she can't move her face. Therefore, she doesn't have the proper muscles to act. So she's not putting in as much emotion as I know she can because I've seen her in other things. Turns out this season, it's not that she got work done, it's that they put so much face tape on her that's hidden underneath that wig, and I don't like it. I was reading about why it happened, and then there are a lot of rumors, and I think the main one is that just too many people were upset she didn't look like Angelica Huston, who plays Morticia in the 90s movies, and that just pisses me off because she's not Angelica Huston. She's a new iteration, and once again, y'all, the 90s movies aren't the original. They started out as comics. Angelica Huston doesn't look like Caroline Jones, who's the first person to ever play Morticia Addams. Neither of them look like Bebe Neuwirth, who was Morticia on Broadway. Like, let them be their own people. I don't like that they felt the need to do this to Catherine because it hindered her acting. She couldn't use the proper facial muscles. I spent a lot of time talking about the gripes I have. I do want to talk about the things I did like because it's like hard to say because it sounds like I hated this, but I didn't hate it. Like, I liked it enough to keep going, and I have seen part 2, which I will talk about in my September wrap-up. So I do want to talk about the things I like. The first one being, I think it happened in the first episode, was the stop motion sequence, because I miss Tim Burton's stop motion. I love The Nightmare Before Christmas. That's my favorite movie of all time. I love Corpse Bride. I love Frankenweenie, and I love his, like, original shorts, like the Vincent short. It was creepy looking. I need a full movie with that style. Despite not liking what they did to Morticia's face in this season, I do love her outfits. Her fits ate this season. Every single one I want for myself. And who else's fits went hard this season? Grandmama's, because they included her as well. She's also a different iteration. Usually Grandmama tends to be Gomez's mom, but in this iteration she's Morticia's mother, so it's Grandma Frump. But she looked great, and I laughed. Who was in the costume department this season? Because y'all need some raises. I do like the addition of Agnes. I'm not going to go further. I'm not going to go deeper into who that is exactly. She is kind of unlikable, but in a way where I do like her. Like, I don't think she's particularly a good person, but I do think she's a fun character, if that makes sense. Contrary to some criticism I've been seeing of Wednesday herself in this show, a lot of people are saying she's cringy in season 2. I don't really know what those people are talking about because, quite frankly, I think she's the same person as she was in season 1. Like, a lot of people think she's pretentious, using these big words to seem smarter than other people. But then why did you like season 1? Because she did that in season 1. A lot of people don't like how standoffish she is to Enid this season, but given what she saw in the beginning of the season, spoiler alert, like, I don't blame Wednesday for acting the way she is. Like, she's dealing with it the only way she knows how. I think given how they characterize Wednesday in the show, it's very much in character for her. Also, some recent criticism I've been seeing, again, they're comparing it to the 90s movie, which again is not the original. A lot of people think Netflix just turned her into a moody teenager. I don't really know what these people are talking about because, quite frankly, in the Addams Family Values, the second 90s movie, she's a moody teenager. So I don't mind this. And the one thing I actually really don't mind that a lot of people online seem to hate, I don't mind that Wednesday and Morticia are at odds in this show. So a lot of people don't like this because one of the main things with the Addams Family is that they all love each other unconditionally. Because when the Addams Family first came out, both the comics and the original sitcom, they were purposely written to be the opposite of how fictional couples were written back then. Like, a lot of fictional couples back then I don't want to say hated each other, but so much of the humor were the husband and wife being assholes to each other. Then you got Morticia and Gomez, who are a commentary about that, and they do nothing but love each other. It's the same thing in the 90s movies. The sitcom does it too. They never fight in this. They rarely ever fight. I don't want to say never, but they rarely ever argue in the sitcom. It's all love, and because of that, they also unconditionally love their children no matter what they do. What I'm saying is the main appeal of the Addams Family is that everyone loves each other. Now you have this show where the mother and daughter have a very strained relationship, and people are like, this is not the real Addams Family. Wednesday would never do this. However, I think there's some things to be said about that. One of the reasons I don't mind this is because it is one of the tropes I talked about earlier in this video. I kind of love when movies show a strained mother-daughter relationship and then they have that moment in the end where they make up, and I feel like that is the direction this is going in. They will eventually make up. Not to mention, this is the first time we're seeing Wednesday much older. Even in the Addams Family Values, I think she's at most like a young teen, but before that, Wednesday was always a very young child. In the original sitcom, she's only 6 years old. So we're finally seeing her be a teenager, and sorry, but teenagers are moody. And then also, because of all these iterations, I'm so used to this family having no conflict with each other whatsoever. And despite that being the appeal for them, at the same time, I am interested in seeing how they would react to familial I keep saying contact, I'm trying to say conflict. I want to see them react to familial conflict. I personally do think it's bringing something new to the table for the Addams Family. We can only repeat the same story over and over again. The same way I don't mind them being in the school of outcasts, because a lot of people are like, no, the main Addams Family theme is that they're a kooky family in the midst of normal people. That trope can get old after a while, especially because this family's almost 100 years old, almost 90 years old at this point. So again, bringing something new to the table. Like, she's such an outcast. She's an outcast with other outcasts. I thought that was so cool. But then also back on the topic of Wednesday and Morticia's relationship, I think another reason I don't mind it is while Wednesday's in her own feels, Morticia still clearly loves her daughter in the unconditional Addams Family way. Also, going off that, even though Wednesday is a moody teenager in this, she still loves her family in her own way. She has her own sense of unconditional love, just right now she's kind of going through the motions because she's maturing. I will also say season 1 began to finally find itself at the end of episode 4, and now that I have seen part 2, I do like part 2 a lot better, but again, I will discuss that in the September wrap up. But that was my jumbled thoughts on this specific show. I clearly had a lot to say. I think I said everything. I don't want to repeat myself and keep going and say needless words, so let's move on. So the next show I started and will complete in September because it's a weekly show. That's an anime called The Summer Hikaru Died. This is about a boy named Yoshiki who realizes his friend Hikaru has been possessed by a supernatural entity. This is a horror anime, horror manga. I was expecting something really spooky, really scary, but it's actually oddly cozy. It's a oddly cozy mystery. I don't want to get into too much detail because I think in August I was only able to see like 4 or 5 episodes. So from what I saw though, I did really like seeing Yoshiki's development, his friendship develop with this eldritch horror character, and being conflicted because so much of his love and devotion to this character isn't for the monster itself. It's for the old Hikaru, and just trying to see him come to terms with that. I really loved the art when it was depicting said horror. It felt like a different animation style, and it was really beautiful to look at. And I will say it had a few jump scares that worked on me, and again, I want to go back to the art because the art of these ghosts are fantastic, and it's what makes them look so scary. And just as a funny side comment that has nothing to do with the plot, it is interesting how they frame the point of view sometimes, because there are a few frames, and I really like that they do this, that's in Yoshiki's point of view, and it's just so funny because it does prove that these characters cannot see shit when they have hair in their eyes like that. So this show is really interesting so far. It was recommended by a friend. As of now, I just watched episode 11 today, so episode 12 airs next week, so by the time you watch this video, I will have seen all of it, and I will talk about it in my September wrap-up. Another show I started in the month of August but did not finish yet, it will be finished this month though, is Umbrella Academy Season 3. The general gist of this show is that ex-superheroes get stuck in different timelines, and in each timeline they accidentally cause the end of the world and have to stop that. Now, I started this show because Gerard Way, the singer of My Chemical Romance, wrote the comic it is based on. I remember I struggled a bit with the first half of season 1, and then I really liked it in the end, and then I loved season 2. I remember I finished it in one sitting, but for some reason it just took me years to start season 3, and it's been on my to-watch list for forever, and finally I was like, I've had enough. I'm sick of seeing this on my phone. So I was like, okay, let's watch it. And unfortunately, I am not having a good time. I don't know if it's because of the writing, I don't know if it went downhill, or because I just waited too long to watch this, but literally within the first few minutes of the first episode of season 3, I immediately knew I had fallen out of love with this. This season focuses on the Sparrow Academy. I'm not going to explain who they are because spoilers, but I didn't like any of them. It is kind of the point because they are antagonists, they are at odds with our main characters. But like, usually when I say I like an unlikable character, it's because what I mean is I just think they are fun, fascinating characters. I don't believe a character has to be morally good to be a good written character. But that's not the vibes I got from the Sparrow Academy. Like, I don't think they're well written. One of my main gripes this season is Ben. I do not like Ben this season, which again is kind of the point. He's supposed to be a stark contrast to the Ben of the other timelines, but he's not well written. He's insufferable to watch, and part of it is because his actor can't really act this out. And actually, if I'm being honest with myself, I didn't really like anyone this season. I thought everyone, even in the Umbrella Academy, our main crew of people, were insufferable. Specifically Allison. Allison is on fucking sight. There's a kid in this who was annoying, and now that I'm on season 4, in retrospect, I'm like, oh, they could have written this season without this kid and it would have changed nothing. I don't know, like thinking about it, I truly don't know how much of my hatred for this is because of the writing itself, if maybe the show was never for me in the first place, or I just waited too long to watch it and I just don't care anymore. But I'm too nosy. I have to finish it. So you will see my final thoughts in the next wrap up, because as of talking to you, I only have 4 episodes left of the entire show. But then last but not least, the last show I want to talk about is, of course, The Golden Girls. I have finished season 5. I'm like 10 episodes into season 6. But I'm putting this on pause because for September and October, the times I put aside for this show, I'm going to be watching the Addams Family sitcom instead. But that is it for this long as hell video, and I am thirsty and want to go to bed. So I'm going to go do that. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you guys like this video, give it a big thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Y'all know the drill. And without further ado, I'm going to peace out, and I'll see you guys later. Ciao, tutti.